The bruise on his jaw was turning a sickly shade of purple, but it was the silence in the interrogation room that hit harder than any fist. Sergeant Clint Barker had spent the last hour laughing, bragging to the rookie beside him about how he'd taught a lesson to the vagrant who dared to walk into his precinct. But when the precinct doors swung open and the city commissioner walked in, pointing at the man in handcuffs, Barker's smirk dissolved. He didn't just assault a suspect, he had brutalized Andre Bishop, the man sent to clean up the department. The blood drained from Barker's face as Bishop whispered 3 words that would end his career: "I'm your chief." The rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean, it just made the grime slicker. It was a Tuesday evening, specifically November 14th, a date that would later be cited in court documents and internal affairs reports as the beginning of the end for the notorious Wolfpack unit of the 4th Precinct. Andre Bishop adjusted the collar of his worn-out flannel jacket. He wasn't wearing his dress blues today. There was no gold badge pinned to his chest, no polished brass on his shoulders. To the casual observer, he looked like just another tired man seeking shelter from the relentless Pacific Northwest drizzle. He was 45, a tall black man with graying stubble and weary eyes that had seen too much of the streets, both from the patrol car and from the sidewalk. He had been appointed as the new chief of police exactly 48 hours ago. The press conference was scheduled for tomorrow morning. Tonight, however, Andre wanted to see the truth. He didn't want the sanitized tour given to brass. He didn't want the freshly scrubbed floors and the fake smiles of officers standing at attention. He wanted to know why the 4th Precinct had the highest rate of resisting arrest charges in the state, yet the lowest conviction rate. He wanted to know why citizens whispered the name Clint Barker with fear rather than respect. So, Andre walked in through the front doors, not as Chief Bishop, but as a citizen. The station lobby was stale, smelling of old coffee and floor wax. It was relatively quiet, save for the hum of the vending machine and the low murmur of the dispatch radio behind the glass partition. At the front desk sat Officer Jace Miller, a rookie who looked barely old enough to shave. He was typing on a computer, looking bored, leaning against the counter, cracking his knuckles. Was Sergeant Clint Barker. Barker was a mountain of a man with a buzz cut and forearms the size of tree trunks. He had been with the force for 15 years, accumulating a thick file of complaints that somehow always disappeared or resulted in unsubstantiated findings. He was the alpha of the precinct, the man who set the tone. And tonight, the tone was hostile. Andre approached the desk. He kept his hands visible, his demeanor calm. He carried a small, slightly battered duffel bag containing his change of clothes for the hotel. "Excuse me," Andre said, his voice deep and steady. "I'm looking to file a report regarding a missing person." "My nephew." Officer Miller looked up, ready to help. But Barker intercepted him. The sergeant pushed off the counter, his boots heavy on the linoleum. He didn't look at Andre's eyes. He looked at his clothes, his skin, and the bag. "Shift change in 10 minutes, Barker grunted, not even turning his full body toward Andre. "Come back tomorrow." "It's urgent," Andre pressed gently. "He's been gone for 2 days. I was told I could file a preliminary report any time." Barker turned then, a sneer curling his lip. "You were told. Who told you the streets?" He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Look, pal, we're busy. We got real police work to do. Not chasing after some runaway kid who's probably high in a trap house. Clear out." This was the test. Andre knew the procedure. A missing person report, especially for a minor, was priority one. Refusing to take it was a violation of code. "I have the right to file a report, Sergeant," Andre said, intentionally using the rank he saw on the man's sleeve. "And you have a duty to take it." "Name's Bishop." Barker's eyes narrowed. The air in the lobby shifted, becoming charged with sudden, sharp tension. The use of the word duty seemed to trigger something ugly in the sergeant. He stepped closer, invading Andre's personal space. The smell of stale tobacco and aggression wafted off him. "You got a lot of mouth for a drifter," Barker spat. "You listen to me. I run this front, and I say you're loitering. You got 5 seconds to turn that ass around and walk out that door, or you're spending the night in the cage. I'm not leaving until I speak to a watch commander," Andre stated, standing his ground. He didn't flinch. He didn't back down. That was the spark. Barker's face flushed red. He wasn't used to defiance. In his world, his badge was a crown, and his word was law. To have this man, this nobody in a flannel shirt, challenge him in front of a rookie was an insult he couldn't swallow. "Miller," Barker barked at the rookie, never taking his eyes off Andre. "Log it. Suspect is belligerent, refusing a lawful order, trespassing." "Sarge, he just wants to—" Miller started, his voice trembling. "I said log it!" Barker roared, slamming his hand on the counter. Andre sighed internally. He had hoped the stories were exaggerated. He had hoped the internal audits were wrong. But the reality was worse. This wasn't just negligence. It was predation. "Officer Barker," Andre said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming authoritative. "I am giving you one chance to correct your conduct. Take the report." Barker laughed. It was a cruel, incredulous sound. He reached for his belt, unclipping the retention strap on his baton. "You giving me a chance? You think you're in charge here? Let me show you how the world really works." "Boy." The use of the word boy hung in the air like toxic smoke. Andre's jaw tightened. He shifted his stance, preparing for what he knew was coming. He had seen it in the Luther Hall case in St. Lewis, an undercover officer, beaten by his own colleagues because they saw his skin before they saw his badge. He was living a nightmare he had sworn to dismantle. "Last warning," Barker hissed. "Get out." "No," Andre said. The violence wasn't cinematic. It was ugly, fast, and desperate. Barker didn't go for his cuffs. He lunged. He swung a heavy, open palm toward Andre's chest. A shove meant to knock the wind out of him, but Andre was trained. He sidestepped smoothly, parrying the arm. "Do not touch me," Andre warned. "That is assault." "Resisting," Barker yelled, the magic word that justified everything in his playbook. "He's resisting Miller. Get out here." Barker swung again, this time a closed fist aimed at Andre's ribs. Andre blocked it, absorbing the blow on his forearm, but the sheer size of Barker was a problem. The sergeant was a brawler, fighting with the weight of entitlement. He tackled Andre, driving him back against the vending machine. The glass cracked with a sickening crunch. "Get down! Get on the ground!" Barker screamed, though he was the one pinning Andre upright, making compliance impossible. It was a classic tactic scream, conflicting orders while escalating force. Andre didn't fight back. He couldn't. If he struck an officer, even in self-defense, the legal waters would muddy. He had to endure. He had to document. He curled up, protecting his head, trying to de-escalate. "I am not resisting, I am complying. Shut up," Barker grunted, driving a knee into Andre's thigh. The pain was blinding. Andre's leg buckled, and they went down to the hard linoleum floor. "Miller, help me subdue him," Barker shouted. The rookie, Miller, vaulted over the desk. He looked terrified. He saw a man on the ground, hands raised in surrender, and his superior officer raining blows down on him. "Sarge, he's not fighting," Miller pleaded, hovering uncertainly. "He's reaching for my belt, he's going for my gun," Barker lied, his voice strained with exertion. It was the lie that killed people. It was the lie that turned murders into justifiable homicides. Andre knew he was in the danger zone. If Barker convinced himself of his own lie, he would pull his weapon. "I have no weapon," Andre shouted, his face pressed against the cold tiles. "Look at my hands, Miller. Look at my hands." Miller looked. He saw Andre's empty palms flat on the floor. "Sarge, stop, he's clean." Barker ignored him. He grabbed a handful of Andre's hair and slammed his face into the floor. A split lip, the taste of copper. The world spun. Barker wasn't arresting him. He was punishing him. He twisted Andre's arm behind his back, with enough torque to tear the rotator cuff. "You come into my house," Barker whispered, his lips close to Andre's ear, his breath hot and rancid. "You disrespect me. You're going to wish you were never born." Click. The handcuffs bit into Andre's wrists, ratcheted so tight they pinched the nerves. Barker didn't stop there. He hauled Andre up by the cuffs, sending a searing bolt of agony through his shoulders. Andre groaned, his knees scraping the floor. "Get him to the holding cell. The back one. No cameras," Barker ordered, panting heavily. Miller froze. "Sarge, the back cell is that's for overflow. The cameras are down in there. We should put him in processing. Did I ask for your opinion? Rookie." Barker spun on him, eyes wild. "I said the back cell. This dirtbag tripped and fell. That's what happened. He was high, he was combative, and he fell. Write it up." Miller looked at Andre. He saw the blood dripping from Andre's lip onto the pristine floor. He saw the calm, terrifying intelligence in Andre's eyes. "Do it," Barker roared. Miller flinched. He grabbed Andre's other arm, but gently. "Come on," he whispered, his voice shaky. "Just don't make him madder." They dragged him down the hallway. The station was beginning to fill up as the shift change approached. Other officers walked by. Some looked away, ignoring the familiar sight of Barker dragging a suspect. Others, the boys' club, gave Barker nodding approval. "Rough one, Clint?" Officer Donaldson asked, sipping a soda as he leaned against a filing cabinet. "Just another piece of trash thinking he knows the law." Barker laughed, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Taking him to the VIP suite." Donaldson chuckled. "Have fun." Andre memorized every face. Donaldson. Miller. The desk sergeant who didn't look up. He was cataloguing them. He was building the case in his mind, even as his body throbbed with pain. They reached the back holding cell. It was a small, damp room with a concrete bench and a heavy steel door. There was indeed a camera in the corner, but the red light was off. The lens had been taped over a crude, obvious violation that had likely been ignored for months. Barker shoved Andre inside. Andre stumbled, catching himself on the wall. He turned around, breathing hard, blood staining his teeth. "You've made a mistake, Sergeant," Andre said. His voice was quieter now, raspy but unbroken. "A career-ending mistake." Barker laughed, standing in the doorway, blocking the light. He cracked his knuckles again. "You guys always say that. I'll sue. I know my rights. Let me tell you something. Bishop, if that is your name, nobody cares about you. You're just a stat. Tonight, you're going to learn respect. And tomorrow, you're going to plead guilty to assaulting an officer just so you can get out of here alive." Barker stepped into the cell. He signaled Miller to stay outside. "Watch the door, kid. Make sure nobody comes down this hall." "Sarge, please," Miller whispered. "We don't need to do this. Close the door. Miller." The heavy steel door slammed shut, but Barker didn't lock it. He stayed inside with Andre. The space was claustrophobic. "Now," Barker said, unbuttoning his shirt cuffs, "let's finish that conversation." Andre stood up straight. Despite the handcuffs, despite the blood, he pulled himself to his full height. He looked less like a victim and more like a judge. "Before you do anything else," Andre said, his eyes locking onto Barker's, "I want you to think about the name Luther Hall. Do you know that name?" Sergeant Barker paused, confused by the specific reference. "What? Luther Hall?" Andre repeated. "St. Louis Police Department. An undercover officer beaten by his own colleagues during a protest in 2017. They didn't know who he was. They thought he was just another thug. It cost the city $5 million. It sent those officers to federal prison." Barker sneered. "You think you're a cop, you?" He looked Andre up and down with disgust. "You ain't no cop. You're nothing." "I never said I was a cop," Andre corrected. "I said I'm the man who is going to sign your termination papers." Barker's patience snapped. He raised his fist for another strike. Suddenly, the heavy door creaked open. It wasn't Miller. Standing in the doorway was a woman in a sharp grey suit, holding a briefcase. Behind her were two large men in dark suits with earpieces, internal affairs, and behind them, looking pale and sick, was the precinct captain, Captain Reynolds. Barker's fist froze in mid-air. He turned, his eyes wide. "Captain I. This suspect was resisting. I was just..." Captain Reynolds didn't look at Barker. He looked at Andre. He looked at the blood on Andre's face. The captain looked like he was about to vomit. "Sergeant Barker," the captain said, his voice cracking. "Step away from the chief." Barker blinked. The words didn't compute. What? The woman in the suit stepped forward. She was the city attorney. She looked at Andre with horror and deep respect. "Chief Bishop," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "We were tracking your GPS when you stopped moving in the holding area. We came as fast as we could." Andre looked at Barker. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating, and absolute. Barker's face went from red to a ghostly, terrified white. His eyes darted from the captain to the city attorney, and finally back to the man he had just beaten. The man in the flannel shirt, the man in handcuffs. Chief Barker whispered, the word barely escaping his throat. Andre spit a mouthful of blood onto the floor near Barker's boot. "Unlock these cuffs, Sergeant," Andre said softly. "Now." The metallic click of the key turning in the handcuffs was the loudest sound in the universe. Sergeant Clint Barker's hands were shaking so violently he missed the keyhole twice. Sweat beaded on his forehead, rolling down into his eyes, stinging them. He didn't dare wipe it away. He was paralyzed by a terror he had never known, the terror of a predator, suddenly realizing he is locked in a cage with a lion. I'm trying," Barker stammered, his voice a pathetic squeak compared to the roar he had used just minutes ago. "Take your time." "Sergeant," Andre Bishop said. His voice was ice cold. "I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember how it feels to hold the key to a man's freedom and realize you never had the right to take it in the first place." The cuffs finally sprang open. Andre rotated his wrists. wincing as the blood flow returned. Deep, angry red welts circled his skin where the metal had bitten in. He didn't rub them. He let them show. Captain Reynolds stepped into the small cell, looking like a man walking to the gallows. Chief Bishop. Sir, I don't know what to say. If I had known, if you had known I was the chief, this wouldn't have happened. Andre cut him off, turning his gaze to the captain. Is that what you're saying, Captain Reynolds? That if I were just Andre Bishop, unemployed carpenter, this would have been acceptable protocol? Reynolds swallowed hard. No, sir, of course not. It's just Barker. He has a way of running your precinct. Andre finished for him. Which means you don't. Andre walked out of the cell. The pain in his ribs was sharp, likely a fracture, but the adrenaline of justice was a potent painkiller. He walked past Miller, the rookie. Miller was pressed against the wall, his face pale as a sheet. He looked like he wanted to disappear into the drywall. You, Andre said, stopping in front of the kid. Miller flinched. Sir, you knew it was wrong, Andre said. It wasn't a question. I saw it in your eyes. You wanted to stop him, but you didn't. He's my sergeant. Sir, I'm on probation. You thought your career was worth more than my safety, Andre said. He didn't yell. The disappointment was worse than anger. We'll get back to that. Andre walked back into the main bullpen area. The station was buzzing with the shift change. Officers were swapping gear, laughing, drinking coffee. They hadn't seen the commotion in the back hallway yet, when Andre walked in, followed by the city attorney, 2 IA agents, and a pale-faced Captain Reynolds. The room went quiet. But when Barker walked out behind them, stripped of his belt, his gun, and his badge, flanked by the IA agents, the silence turned absolute. Andre stood in the center of the room. He looked a wreck. His flannel shirt was torn at the shoulder. His lip was swollen and bloody. Dirt from the floor was smeared on his cheek. He looked like every victim these officers had ever ignored. Attention! Captain Reynolds barked, his voice cracking. Listen up! The officers scrambled to stand, confused. They looked at Barker, expecting a joke, expecting him to laugh it off. But Barker was staring at the floor, his shoulders slumped. My name is Andre Bishop, Andre announced. His voice carried to the back of the room without shouting. Yesterday, the mayor appointed me as your new chief of police. A collective gasp went through the room. Several officers exchanged panicked glances. Officer Donaldson, who had joked about the VIP suite earlier, dropped his soda can. It clattered loudly on the floor, spilling brown liquid over his boots. I came here tonight as a citizen, Andre continued, panning the room, making eye contact with every single officer. I came to file a missing persons report, a simple, routine request. Within 10 minutes, I was insulted, assaulted, unlawfully detained, and beaten by Sergeant Barker. He pointed a finger at Barker, who flinched. Sergeant Barker told me that this was his house, Andre said. He told me I was nothing. He told me I would learn respect. Andre took a step forward, favoring his injured leg. Well, he was right about one thing. Someone is going to learn about respect tonight. But it isn't me. He turned to the lead internal affairs agent, a stern man named Agent Kowalski. Agent Kowalski, lock this building down. Sir, a random officer asked from the back. You heard me, Andre said. Nobody leaves. Nobody enters. Shift change is cancelled. The night shift stays. The day shift stays. If you walked through those doors today, you are a witness to a felony. This is crazy, someone muttered. Crazy. Andre spun toward the voice. What's crazy is that a citizen can't walk into a police station without fearing for his life. What's crazy is that a sergeant feels comfortable torturing a suspect in a cell with a taped-over camera. That ends tonight. He looked at Miller. Officer Miller, front and center. Miller walked forward, his legs trembling. He looked like he was walking the Green Mile. Give me your logbook, Andre ordered. Miller handed over the digital tablet. Andre scrolled to the entry from 20 minutes ago. Subject unknown male, incident trespassing, resisting arrest, force used, minimal compliance hold. Andre read it aloud. The words hung in the air, a testament to the lie. Minimal compliance hold, Andre repeated. He touched his swollen jaw. Is that what you call this? Miller. No, sir. Miller whispered. I wrote what he told me to write. Falsifying a police report is a felony, Andre said. Conspiracy to violate civil rights is a federal offense. You are looking at 5 to 10 years in prison. Son. Miller burst into tears. It wasn't dignified, but it was real. The pressure broke him. I didn't want to. He said he'd ruin me. He said, "Shut up!" Miller. Barker roared from the back, finding his voice for one last, desperate attempt at control. Don't say a word. Union rep, I want my union rep. You'll get your rep, Andre said calmly. After you get processed, Agent Kowalski, arrest Sergeant Barker for aggravated assault, false imprisonment, and deprivation of rights under color of law. The handcuffs came out again. This time, they weren't for Andre. Agent Kowalski spun Barker around. The click of the cuffs was different this time. It was the sound of finality. You can't do this, Barker screamed as he was marched toward the exit. I've got 20 years I know where the bodies are buried. You can't touch me. I just did, Andre said. As Barker was dragged out, kicking and screaming like the criminals he despised, Andre turned back to the room of stunned officers. Now, Andre said, wincing as he sat on the edge of a desk, we are going to have a very long night. Every single one of you is going to write a statement about what you saw, what you heard, and what you know about the wolf pack. And if I find out one of you lies, if I find one omission, he let the threat hang. Captain Reynolds, Andre said. Yes, Chief. Get me an ice pack, and then get me your resignation. The 4th Precinct became a fortress of solitude. The blinds were drawn. The phones were confiscated, all of them. Andre knew how the blue wall worked. Text messages would fly, stories would be synchronized, evidence would be deleted. He had to cut the lines of communication immediately. Andre sat in the captain's office, ice pressed against his jaw. The pain was throbbing now, a steady drumbeat in his skull. He refused to go to the hospital. He needed to be here. He needed to be the ghost haunting the machine. Agent Kowalski knocked on the doorframe. Sir, we've secured the hard drives from the server room. But there's a problem. Let me guess, Andre said. The footage from the lobby is missing. Corrupted, Kowalski corrected. System malfunction at exactly 6:45 p.m. Right when you walked in? Andre sighed. Of course it is. Barker's got a friend in IT, or he knows the override codes. Without the video, it's your word against his regarding the initial provocation. Kowalski warned. He's already claiming you lunged at him. His union lawyer is on the way. They're going to paint you as an erratic, aggressive stranger who provoked a decorated officer. Andre looked at the reflection in the glass of the office window. He saw a battered man. He knew how the media would spin it if Barker got ahead of the story. New chief in brawl on first day. Was he drunk? They would drag his name through the mud to save the precinct's reputation. "We need Miller," Andre said. The rookie Kowalski asked. "He's a mess. He's in interview room 2, hyperventilating." "He's the key," Andre said. "Barker is the rot. But Miller is the part that can still be saved. Or the part that sinks us." Andre stood up. "I'll talk to him." "Sir, legally, you're the victim. You shouldn't conduct the interrogation." "I'm not interrogating him as a victim," Andre said, adjusting his jacket. "I'm talking to him as his chief, and I'm going to offer him a lifeline." Andre walked to interview room 2. It was next to the cell where he had been held. The irony wasn't lost on him. Inside, Officer Jace Miller was sitting with his head in his hands. His badge lay on the table in front of him, detached, like a dead insect. Andre walked in and closed the door. He didn't sit. He leaned against the wall, watching the kid. "Jace," Andre said. Miller looked up. His eyes were red and puffy. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix my ribs." "Jace," Andre said softly. "And sorry doesn't give back the years to the people Barker has framed. You think I'm the first." Miller looked down. "No. Everyone knows. He targets people. Transients. Minorities. People who can't fight back. And you watched," Andre said. "How many times?" "I've only been here 6 months," Miller pleaded. "The first time I tried to say something, Barker slammed me against a locker. He told me if I ratted, I'd never get back up. He said I'd bleed out in an alley somewhere while dispatch put me on hold." Andre nodded. It was a terrifying threat, and a real one. "I know that fear. It's the fear that keeps good cops silent until they become bad cops. But tonight, the fear changes. Tonight, you have to decide who you're more afraid of, Clint Barker or the federal government." Andre pulled a chair out and sat opposite Miller. "Here is the situation," Andre said. "The lobby camera footage is corrupted. Barker is going to say I attacked him. He's going to say you saw it. He's counting on you. Jace, he thinks you're his boy. He thinks you're part of the wolf pack." Miller shook his head vigorously. "I'm not. I hate them." "Then prove it," Andre said. "You were there. You have a body cam." "It was off," Miller admitted, shame coloring his cheeks. "Barker has a signal. He taps his chest twice. That means lights out. We turn them off." "So we have no video," Andre said, leaning back, disappointment etched on his face. "Wait," Miller said. He fumbled with his hands. "We don't have video, but Barker doesn't know about the new recall feature." Andre sat up. "Explain." "The new Axon body cams," Miller said, his voice gaining a little strength. "The ones we got last month, they have a buffer. Even if you don't hit record, they are always capturing a 30-second rolling loop of video and audio in the background. But when you hit record, it saves the previous 2 minutes of audio now. It's a firmware update." "You didn't hit record," Andre reminded him. "No," Miller said. "But I did hit the sync button when I got back to the desk to upload the log. I was nervous. I was fidgeting. I synced the camera to the dock wirelessly." Miller looked at Andre with wide eyes. "When you sync, it dumps the buffer log. The audio from the last 10 minutes of standby mode is buried in the cache files. It's not video, just low-quality audio. It's meant for diagnostics. Andre felt a surge of hope. You think the audio of the assault is on there? If Barker was screaming loud enough, Miller said, and he was... Andre stood up. Where is the camera? It's in my locker, Miller said. Let's go. They walked out of the room. The precinct was still in lockdown. Officers were sitting at their desks, looking like school children in detention, when they saw Andre and Miller walking together. The tension spiked. They went to the locker room. Miller opened his locker. There, sitting on the top shelf, was the black rectangular device. Miller handed it to Andre. It felt like a grenade. If this has what you say it has, Andre said, you might save your badge, son. I don't care about the badge anymore, Miller said quietly. I just want to be able to sleep. Andre handed the camera to Agent Kowalski, who had followed them. Get this to the tech lab. Now, I want the diagnostic audio cache extracted. Kowalski nodded and ran. Andre turned back to the main room. He needed to break the wolf pack completely. He needed them to turn on each other before the lawyers arrived. He walked into the center of the bullpen again. Listen to me, Andre announced. Sergeant Barker is in custody. Officer Miller is cooperating fully. We are recovering digital evidence that Sergeant Barker believes was destroyed. He saw Officer Donaldson shift uncomfortably. He saw the glances being exchanged. I know Barker didn't work alone, Andre said. I know there's a crew, the Wolf Pack. You guys think you're untouchable. You think the Union will save you. He paused, letting the silence stretch. I am giving you a 10-minute window, Andre said. For the next 10 minutes. My door is open. If you have information about illegal activities in this precinct, excessive force, theft, planting evidence, and you walk through that door, you will be treated as a witness. You will keep your pension. You might even keep your freedom. He looked at his watch. But in 10 minutes, plus 1 second. If I find your name in Barker's phone, if I find you in the files, I will bring the full weight of the district attorney, the state attorney general, and the FBI down on you. I will hunt you not as a chief, but as a prosecutor. He turned and walked back to the captain's office. Leaving the door wide open, he sat down and waited. 1 minute passed. Silence. 2 minutes. Then, a hesitant footstep. It wasn't a rookie. It was Officer Donaldson, the man who had laughed about the VIP suite. The man who had been Barker's right hand for 5 years. Donaldson walked into the office, his face grey. He closed the door behind him. "Chief," Donaldson said, his voice shaking, I can't go to jail. I have 3 kids." "Then start talking," Andre said, leaning back. "Tell me about the Wolf Pack." Donaldson took a deep breath. It started 3 years ago. With the drug busts. We weren't logging all the cash. As Donaldson began to spill the secrets of the 4th Precinct, Andre Bishop realized that the bruise on his face was a small price to pay. He wasn't just cleaning house, he was tearing it down to the studs. But the night wasn't over. Barker had made 1 phone call before his phone was snatched. And that call wasn't to a lawyer, it was to a man named Vinny, a local fixer with ties to the council. The political backlash was coming, and Andre was about to find out that the corruption didn't stop at the precinct doors. It went all the way to City Hall. The clock on the wall of the mayor's private conference room read 2:15 a.m. The city of Seattle slept, but inside room 404 of City Hall, the air was thick with cigar smoke and panic. Andre Bishop sat at the mahogany table. He hadn't changed clothes. His flannel shirt was stiff with dried blood. and his jaw was swollen to the size of a grapefruit. He refused the medical attention offered by the paramedics in the lobby, insisting on securing the chain of custody for the evidence first. Across from him sat Mayor Gerald Sterling. Sterling was a polished man, a career politician with a smile that usually won elections. But tonight, he looked like a man watching his house burn down. Beside him was the city attorney, Sarah Jenkins, looking pale and terrified, and in the corner, leaning against a bookshelf, was a man Andre recognized from the intelligence briefings, Vincent "Vinny" Moretti. He wasn't on the city payroll, but everyone knew Vinny was the man you called when you needed a problem to disappear quietly. "Chief Bishop," Mayor Sterling began, his voice smooth but strained. "First, let me apologize for what happened to you. It's regrettable. Truly. Regrettable is when it rains on a parade. Mr. Mayor," Andre said, his voice a low rumble. "What happened to me was a felony. What happened to the citizens of the 4th Precinct for the last 5 years was a systematic criminal enterprise." Sterling sighed, rubbing his temples. "Andre, look, we know Barker is a loose cannon. We've been trying to build a case to push him out for months. But you have to understand the optics here. If you arrest a sergeant, a captain, and half a shift, the city will burn. The trust in the department will be zero." "The trust is already zero," Andre countered. "That's why you hired me. Or did you hire me just to be a poster boy?" Vinny stepped forward from the corner. He wore a suit that cost more than Andre's car. "Nobody's saying you're a poster boy, Chief, but you're new. You don't know the ecosystem. Barker isn't just a cop. He's the union rep for the precinct. You take him down like this, drag him out in cuffs, and the union calls a blue flu. No cops on the street tomorrow. Chaos. Looting." "Is that a threat?" Andre asked, turning his good eye toward the fixer. "It's a weather forecast." Vinny smiled thinly. "Here's the offer. We suspend Barker. With pay, pending investigation. He retires in 3 months with a medical disability. He goes away. You get to be the hero who cleaned up the department without a scandal. The audio tape, it gets lost." Andre looked at Sarah Jenkins. "Is the city attorney suggesting obstruction of justice?" Jenkins looked down at her notepad, unable to meet his gaze. Andre reached into his pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. It contained the copy of the audio cache recovered from Officer Miller's body cam. "You haven't heard it yet, have you?" Andre asked. "We don't need to." Sterling started. "Play it," Andre ordered. He didn't ask. He commanded. He slid the drive across the polished mahogany. Reluctantly. Jenkins plugged it into her laptop and connected it to the room's speakers. Static filled the room. Then, the sound of heavy breathing. Then, the distinct, terrifying voice of Clint Barker. "Audio, you come into my house. You disrespect me. You're going to wish you were never born." Thud, a groan of pain. "Audio, I run this front. Not the captain, not the mayor. Me. I bring in the cash. I make the rules." The room went silent. The mayor froze. Audio Barker shouting, "You think Sterling cares about you? Sterling takes his cut every month from the seizure fund. I own him." The recording cut out as Andre signaled Jenkins to stop. The silence in the room was now deafening. Mayor Sterling's face had drained of all color. The cigar in his hand had burned down to the filter, singeing his fingers. But he didn't flinch. He was in shock. He said that," Sterling whispered. "He said a lot more." Andre lied. He didn't know if there was more about the mayor. but he needed to bluff. Officer Donaldson is currently in a safe house, giving a deposition to the FBI about the seizure fund. Apparently, the Wolfpack wasn't just skimming drug money. They were funneling it into campaign donations through shell companies. This was the twist. It wasn't just police brutality. It was a racket. Vinny's smooth demeanor cracked. He looked at the mayor with genuine alarm. "Jerry, if the feds are involved—" "I didn't call the feds yet," Andre said, leaning back. "I called my team, but the feds are next. Unless—" "Unless what?" Sterling asked. "Desperate." "Unless you step aside," Andre said. "I don't want a deal for Barker. I want him prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I want his pension revoked. I want the captain fired. And I want full autonomy to restructure the department without City Hall interference." "And the mayor?" Vinny asked, his hand drifting toward his jacket pocket. Andre stood up. He was injured, but he was imposing. "The mayor is going to hold a press conference tomorrow. He is going to condemn the actions of the Wolfpack. He is going to praise Officer Miller for his bravery in coming forward. And then he is going to announce that he will not seek re-election due to health reasons." Sterling slumped in his chair. He was trapped. Barker, the man who was supposed to be his enforcer, had become his executioner with a single boastful rant. "You have until 8 o'clock a.m., Andre said, "or I release the full tape to the Seattle Times and the Washington Post." Andre turned to leave. Vinny moved to block the door. "You think you can just walk out of here with that drive?" Vinny asked menacingly. Andre didn't flinch. "Vinny, I have 3 officers waiting in the hall. Good ones. Not from the 4th precinct. Try it." Vinny hesitated, then stepped aside. Andre walked out of City Hall. The dawn was breaking over the Seattle skyline. The rain had stopped. The air felt cleaner, but he knew the hardest part was just beginning. Barker was in a cell, but a wounded animal is most dangerous when it's cornered. The fallout was nuclear. By noon the next day, the story hadn't just leaked, it had exploded. Andre didn't trust the mayor to keep his word, so he had leaked a redacted version of the incident report, minus the mayor's involvement, to an investigative journalist named Thomas Benner, a Pulitzer winner known for his integrity. The headline ran across every screen in the city: "New police chief brutalized by own officers in undercover sting." The video of Barker being led out of the precinct in handcuffs went viral instantly. #The Wolfpack became the #1 trending topic globally. But it was the audio, the 30 seconds of diagnostic cache audio from Miller's camera, that shook the nation. Hearing the visceral sound of a fist hitting flesh, followed by Barker's arrogant declaration of ownership over the precinct, turned the public's stomach. But Barker wasn't going down without a fight. 3 days later, the arraignment was held at the King County Superior Court. The courthouse was besieged by protesters, cameras, and supporters of the Blue Lives Matter movement who believed Barker was being set up. Barker entered the courtroom wearing a suit that didn't fit, trying to look like a humble public servant. His lawyer, a high-priced shark named Richard Sterling, no relation to the mayor, but just as slimy, stood by his side. "Your Honor," Attorney Sterling bellowed, "this is a witch hunt. My client, Sergeant Barker, was confronted by an aggressive, unknown male who refused to identify himself. The victim provoked the altercation to make a political statement. We move for immediate dismissal." Andre sat in the front row. He wore his full dress uniform now, 4 stars on his collar. His jaw was still bruised, a visible reminder of the truth. He sat stoically, eyes fixed on Barker. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named District Attorney Elena Vance. Wait number, the user said. No. Elena, let's correct. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named District Attorney Catherine Ross, stood up. Your Honor, the people have evidence that this was not an isolation incident. We have sworn affidavits from 3 other officers in the precinct, including Officer Donaldson, detailing a pattern of racketeering and assault. Barker turned his head, scanning the room. He locked eyes with Donaldson, who was sitting in the back, flanked by 2 marshals. Barker's face twisted into a snarl. The blue wall had crumbled. The judge, the Honorable William T. Hatcher, adjusted his glasses. Mr. Sterling, your motion is denied. Given the severity of the charges and the flight risk, bail is denied. Barker slammed his fist on the table. I have rights. I served this city for 20 years, and for 5 of them, you terrorized it, Judge Hatcher said coldly. Remand the defendant. As the bailiffs moved in, Barker lunged, not at the judge, but toward the gallery. He screamed at Andre, You think you won. Bishop, you think this is over. You don't know who you're messing with. Vinnie Call. Vinnie. The mention of the fixer's name in open court was the final nail in the mayor's coffin. Cameras flashed blindingly as Barker was dragged away, foaming at the mouth. But karma has a way of hitting back harder than a judge's gavel. That night, Andre returned to his temporary housing. He was exhausted. He poured a glass of water and sat by the window. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Chief Bishop, a voice said. It was Vinnie. You're a bold man calling me. Vincent, Andre said, after Barker screamed your name on live TV. Barker is a fool, Vinnie said, his voice devoid of emotion. He's a liability, and liabilities get liquidated. I'm just calling to tell you. You won. The mayor is resigning tomorrow. I'm leaving the country for a while. You cleaned the house. Chief, enjoy the silence. Click. Andre frowned. Liabilities get liquidated. 2 hours later, news broke from the King County Jail. Sergeant Clint Barker had been found in his cell. He had been beaten, badly, not by guards, but by the general population. Someone had, accidentally, left his cell door unlocked during the recreation hour. The inmates, many of whom were there because of Barker's falsified reports, had taken their pound of flesh. Barker survived. Barely. He was in the ICU, handcuffed to a bed. His face shattered in the exact same places he had shattered Andre's. Andre drove to the hospital. He didn't go in to gloat. He stood in the hallway, looking through the glass. Barker was awake. One eye was swollen shut. He saw Andre standing there. The fear in Barker's remaining eye was primal. He wasn't the alpha anymore. He was prey. Andre walked into the room. The machines beeped rhythmically. I didn't order this, Andre said quietly. I wanted you in prison, not the hospital. Barker tried to speak, but his jaw was wired shut. He made a pathetic, gurgling sound. Tears leaked from his eye. You built a world of violence, Clint, Andre said, using his first name for the first time. You thought you were the king of it, but violence doesn't have a king. It just has victims. And now, you're one of them. Andre placed a piece of paper on the bedside table. That's a plea deal from the DA. 20 years. Federal prison. Protective custody. It's the only way you survive the next decade. If you stay in general pop, well, you saw what happened in 1 hour. Barker looked at the paper. It was his surrender. Sign it, Andre said. And tell us everything about Vinnie and the mayor. Clear the board. Barker nodded slowly. painfully. The wolf pack was dead. But as Andre walked out of the hospital into the cool night air, he felt a vibration in his pocket. A text message from Officer Miller. "Chief, you need to come to the precinct." Now, it's Donaldson. He didn't show up for his shift. Andre's blood ran cold. Donaldson was the star witness. If Vinny was liquidating liabilities, Barker wasn't the only one on the list. The victory lap was over. The war wasn't finished. The rain had returned, slashing sideways against the windshield of Andre's unmarked cruiser. The sirens were silent, but the engine roared as Andre Bishop tore through the wet streets of Seattle. Beside him, Officer Miller clutched the dashboard, his face pale but determined. "Track it again," Andre commanded, his voice tight. Miller tapped furiously on the laptop. His phone pinged near the shipping yards. "Pier 54, it's moving toward the water. Chief, they're not taking him to a safe house." Andre grimaced, shifting gears. "They're taking him for a swim." Vinnie Moretti wasn't just a fixer, he was an eraser. And Donaldson, the man whose testimony could bury the mayor and the entire corruption ring, was about to be erased. Andre drifted the heavy SUV around a corner, tires screeching in protest. They hit the industrial district, a maze of rusted containers and shadows. Ahead, the tail lights of a black sedan cut through the gloom. It was parked near the edge of the pier. Two figures were dragging a third man Donaldson toward the dark, churning water of Puget Sound. "Hold on," Andre warned. He didn't brake. He floored it. The SUV surged forward, headlights blinding the men on the pier. Andre slammed on the brakes at the last second, skidding the vehicle sideways to create a barricade between the sedan and the water. He was out of the door before the car stopped rocking, his service weapon drawn. "Police, get on the ground!" Andre's voice boomed over the crash of the waves. The two enforcers froze. They were big men, Vinnie's muscle, but they looked uncertain. They held Donaldson between them. Donaldson was battered, his lips split, terror in his eyes. "Let him go," Andre ordered, stepping forward into the rain. "Now! You're making a mistake. Chief!" one of the men growled, his hand inching toward his jacket. "Vinnie said this ends tonight." "It does end tonight," Andre said, his aim steady. "But not the way Vinnie thinks. Look behind you." Blue and red lights flooded the pier. It wasn't just one car. It was 6. Officer Miller had called in the cavalry, not the corrupt old guard, but the new shift. The officers Andre had spoken to, the ones who had been waiting for a leader worth following. The enforcers looked at the wall of lights, then at Andre. They realized the math didn't work. They released Donaldson, who collapsed onto the wet concrete, gasping for air. "Hands, let me see hands," Miller shouted, rushing forward with cuffs. As the enforcers were detained, Andre walked over to Donaldson. He knelt down, offering a hand. "You okay?" Donaldson looked up, shivering. I thought I was dead. They said I talked too much." "You talked just enough," Andre said, pulling him up. "Come on. We have a mayor to visit." The following morning, the sun broke over a changed city. The arrest of Vinnie Moretti's men led to a swift and brutal unraveling of the conspiracy. Faced with kidnapping charges and the RICO Act, Vinnie himself was apprehended at the airport, trying to board a flight to non-extradition country. To save his own skin, he flipped on everyone, including Mayor Gerald Sterling. By 10 o'clock a.m., Mayor Sterling had resigned in disgrace, citing personal reasons that everyone knew meant impending indictment. But the real karma hit Clint Barker the hardest. From his hospital bed in the prison ward, Barker watched the news. He saw Andre Bishop standing at the podium, not as a victim, but as the chief who had purged the department in less than a week. He saw the community rallying behind the police for the first time in years. Barker looked at his own reflection in the turned-off TV screen. His face was still a mess of bruises. His career was ash. His pension was gone. He was facing 20 years in federal prison, where he would be housed with the very people he had tormented. The wolf pack was just a memory, a cautionary tale told to rookies. A week later, Andre walked into the 4th precinct. The atmosphere was different. The fear was gone. The silence was replaced by the hum of actual work. Andre stopped at the front desk. Officer Miller was there, looking sharp, his uniform pressed. "Morning, Chief," Miller said, snapping a crisp salute. "At ease." "Jace." Andre smiled, the bruise on his jaw finally fading to a faint yellow mark. "How's the log looking?" "All clear, sir." Miller beamed. "No missing persons. No resistance." Andre nodded and walked toward his office. He passed the spot in the lobby where he had been tackled. The vending machine had been fixed. The floor was clean. He entered his office and closed the door. He took off his peaked cap and set it on the desk. Next to it, he placed the small, battered flannel jacket he had worn that first night. He kept it there as a reminder. He wasn't just a chief. He was a citizen first, and he would never let anyone in his city forget that the badge was a shield, not a sword. Andre sat down, picked up a file, and began to work. The cleanup was done. Now, the building began. And that is the story of how one man's arrogance became his downfall, and how true leadership is forged in the fire of adversity. Sergeant Barker thought his badge gave him the right to be a bully, but he learned the hard way that authority without integrity is just a house of cards. Andre Bishop didn't just beat the system, he became the system, proving that justice, real justice, always finds a way to balance the scales. If you enjoyed this story of karma and justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share this video with your friends who love a good underdog story, and subscribe so you never miss out on our next episode. We have a crazy story coming up next week about a crooked judge who messed with the wrong mechanic. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.